This is CBC Here and Now.
So I said, well, let's get ready and get in the line. So we ended up getting in the line and just started driving.
The Bay d'Espoir Highway is closed, the region cut off as forest fires burn out of control.
Well, those are also prompting some air quality statements through parts of the province. The heat has ended, and there's some relief in the forecast.
I don't think at first people really believed that it would last as long as what it did.
Coming up in half an hour, the fighting spirit in Conche. The story of one outport surviving 30 years after the cod moratorium. Welcome to Here and Now, I'm Carolyn Stokes. A pair of out-of-control forest fires has shut down access to Newfoundland's south coast. Highway 360 that leads to Bay d'Espoir and Cape Breton is closed at this hour. Here and Now's Garrett Berry joins me now live from the newsroom. So Garrett, what do we know about what's happening?
Carolyn, I just got off the phone minutes ago with the forest fire duty officer in the province. The latest word is that the Bay d'Espoir Highway remains closed, and it's not clear as we speak tonight when it might reopen. It has been shut down since 4 p.m. yesterday afternoon. Those are the firefighters and water bombers that have spent the last 24 hours, well 24 hours plus now, working at this pair of fires along the Bay d'Espoir Highway. But this afternoon brought a setback to the efforts. Wind and smoke conditions worsened this afternoon, sending smoke further and further away. That forced firefighters to relocate their staging area at about 3 p.m. today. Now, despite that highway shut down, some vehicles did move through late last night. Here is that incredible sight. Mallory Slade and her family drove through at around 9:30 on Sunday evening in this small line of traffic. She said she was seeing this type of picture for about 30 minutes, and that's how long it took to get through this smoky area.
It was nerve-wracking. My daughter was really scared. She cried the whole time. She sat in the back seat with her brothers, and we were reassuring her that we were safe and we were going to get home and things like that. And at the end of it, she calmed down. But it was definitely a different moment. I've never experienced anything like it before. I've never been that close to a fire like that, a forest fire.
Provincial officials and municipal officials in the area are now asking residents to avoid this journey, to give firefighters as much area as possible and time as possible to do their work. Highway travel in the Bay d'Espoir Peninsula is a fact of life for those residents. On the south coast, they have to travel for essential medical appointments or sometimes every day for jobs. So there's lots of people waiting tonight for this highway to reopen.
Supported by avoiding the area, not adding to their workload, and ensuring that their safety is paramount as well. We understand that there are emergencies, and we do have some cooperation in getting some care for the region, virtual and the helicopter service, aircraft service as well. So, I can't say that I'm 100% satisfied that because it's not going to be 100%, but we have to understand at the same time that this is required at a time like this.
Central Health has also taken steps to stabilize and secure healthcare services for people in the area. They've moved air ambulance crews in place at the Harbour Breton Hospital, and the emergency room there will transition to virtual services. Those virtual services will stay open until Wednesday morning.
Not an easy situation, as we all know, in terms of emergency services and being diverted to Central. They did bring in an ACP last night to Harbour Breton, and I commend that, and I commend the ACP that's there and working along with the nurse practitioners and the nurses and all the other staff and the administrator. So it's and kudos to them, because they're providing a very valuable service in a very challenging time.
So despite the setback today, firefighters and water bombers can stay on this fire until sunset tonight, and they can keep working. And information will keep coming from the provincial government for the next few hours as they plan, they see what the night brings, and they make plans for tomorrow. Reporting live for Here and Now, I'm Garrett Berry in St. John's.
Well, it was another day of record-breaking temperatures in St. John's, with people scrambling to beat the heat any way they can. A persistent cloud cover and steady breeze provided some relief, but for a serious cool down, folks sought out water, shade, and of course, ice cream. Public swimming pools and splash pads were packed once again. Patios and picnic tables around the city were busy with soft serve and icy drinks, the order of choice at the Water Street Pedestrian Mall. And for those lucky enough to have a car or a ride out of town, beaches were a fabulous place to be. At Rotary Sunshine Park, there was hardly enough room to spread out a towel. But as much fun as these days can be, some people admit that they're ready for a break from the sun.
It is hard, in other places they have air conditioning because they're used to the heat, but there's many Newfoundlanders that don't have air conditioning, so it's difficult.
I've been swimming a lot in my pool because I have a pool outdoors in my backyard, but it's been really warm. I've had to stay indoors a few days because it's been so warm, but I've been mostly swimming every day.
And are you ready for it to cool down just a little? I know that's hard to say in the summer, but is this starting to get a bit much?
Yeah, it's starting to get a little bit too warm.
Is it starting to get a little much for you and your kids?
Oh, not for me, no. I love the heat, so it's all good for me.
Well, the heat canceled two major events initially planned for yesterday in St. John's. This is where the annual Pride Parade would have started in front of City Hall in downtown St. John's, but it was postponed because of the heat. This year's Pride Parade will be St. John's first since the start of the pandemic. Organizers are hoping to announce another date in the coming days. And the Telly 10 was also postponed because of the hot temperatures. Runners had come from all over to take part, but found out Saturday afternoon that the Sunday morning race wouldn't happen. Race organizers say the heat and humidity posed too much of a risk. They're hoping August 28th can be the new date for the Telly 10.
We were all pretty surprised, particularly with the timing, because we all went to pick up our packets, and it was about 10 till 2, and everybody there was like, what? Because they did it very late, obviously. It was a last-minute decision.
I mean, it was a mix of, disappointment, because, of course, this would have been the first Pride Parade since the world went into pandemic mode, but also a slight bit of relief, because, of course, this is a bit unprecedented in terms of a heat wave, and also, it would be a bit of a safety risk for even regular parade goers, let alone us in all of our drags, all in our layers.
And with talk of all of this heat, of course, let's bring in Ashley, our meteorologist, who's outside right now enjoying all of this heat down at Harborside Park. It looks like a very nice evening out there, Ashley.
Yeah, temperatures have cooled down a little bit from what they were earlier this afternoon. But yeah, we talk about all those, you're just talking about all those cancellations rather for the weekend, and there was a good reason for it. We broke a number of records yesterday across the province. Let's take a look at those. They ranged anywhere from the top spot at 32 degrees in Badger, Terra Nova similar to that, Twillingate 31, and then St. John's hit 30.3 degrees. That smashed a record from 1950. Of 28.9. That was the previous record. So Lassie, Winterland, Port aux Basques, Burgeo all even broke that record. Burgeo just barely though, 21.3, and that was the old record was 21.1 back in 1973. So it was hot again today, especially for St. John's. St. John's did break another record today. It was 28.8 degrees earlier this afternoon. I believe it was around 1:30 today. The old record was 28.3 degrees, and that was in 2013. Now, the good news is all of those heat warnings have ended, but what remains in place is a special air quality statement, and that's thanks to the fires that are happening in Central, and it's drifting all of that smoke downwind from the forest fires near the Bay d'Espoir Highway. So it's heavily concentrated near their surface. So in this case, you may be experiencing some cough or throat irritations, which is why that air quality statement is in effect. So that's a look at what's happening now as we head through the next couple of days. There is some relief in the forecast. I'll get into those details coming up.
Thanks so much, Ashley. Well, it is confirmed avian flu is killing seabirds along the coast near Cape St. Mary's. Samples taken from dead seabirds at Point Lance Beach were tested at a lab at Memorial University. The lab now confirms the presence of avian flu. Of 15 samples sent to MUN, the virus showed up in 12 birds. The species includes gannets and kittiwakes. Earlier samples collected by the Canadian Wildlife Service are on their way to the National Lab in Winnipeg for further confirmation. The Puffin Patrol in Witless Bay. Now that's a popular summer program that sees volunteers rescuing stranded puffins. The Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society says the Puffin Patrol is cancelled because the avian flu is a high risk for the program's volunteers. Pope Francis uttered the words today that so many survivors of residential schools and their families have been waiting to hear. I am sorry.
I am here because the first step of my penitential pilgrimage among you is that of again asking forgiveness, of telling you once more that I am deeply sorry. Sorry for the ways in which, regrettably, many Christians supported the colonizing mentality of the powers that oppressed the indigenous peoples. I am sorry.
I ask forgiveness, in particular, for the ways in which many members of the Church and of religious communities cooperated, not least through their indifference, in projects of cultural destruction and forced assimilation promoted by the governments of that time, which culminated in the system of residential schools.
Following his address, the Pope handed back a pair of moccasins given to him by a First Nations delegate who had traveled to Rome earlier this year. Now, the moccasins symbolized a child who never returned home. Then the Pope was presented with a headdress. Before speaking, the Pope visited the Ermineskin Cemetery. He saw the graves of people who attended the residential school nearby. He says his apology today is not the end of the matter. He promises an investigation into the facts. Aside from Alberta, the trip will include stops in Quebec City and Iqaluit. Well, meanwhile, in St. John's, Premier Andrew Furey and St. John's South Mount Pearl MP Seamus O'Regan commented on the historic visit by the Pope.
To see someone of the Pope's stature here on Canadian soil recognizing the ills of the past is an important step in that path, and I applaud him for making the effort. I applaud him for the recognition, and I think the ripple effect will extend not just to the provinces he's visiting, but to the collective Indigenous communities across our great nation.
I know people in Labrador particularly who were directly affected by abuse over the years, and I imagine that today they have some very, very conflicting emotions about this. I'm not even going to hazard a guess as to what they are or how deeply seated they are, other than to say I think we're all thinking of them today, because I think this is a big deal, and I think it opens up a lot of old wounds, and I can only hope it helps to heal some.
Furey and O'Regan were joined the other 3 Atlantic Canadian premiers and 5 cabinet ministers who are in town for those meetings. It was the first in-person meeting for the Atlantic Growth Strategy since 2019. The strategy was launched 5 years ago to help the 4 provinces advance economic growth, immigration, and the transition to a green economy. One of the highlights of today's meeting was a renewal of the Atlantic Trade and Investment Growth Strategy, with Ottawa and the other provinces contributing $20 million to help companies pursue international business opportunities. Well, a 9-year-old boy in St. John's is being heralded as a hero after saving his grandmother's life last week. Simon Hart was home with his grandmother when she began choking on a piece of bread. As Ryan Cook reports, the young boy jumped into action.
Good morning.
Simon Hart has always shared a special bond with his grandmother, Mary Oldford, but even more so now that he's saved her life.
Under stressful situations, it's amazing what happens.
Oldford was having lunch with her grandsons, Simon and Levi, last Monday when she began choking. 9-year-old Simon asked repeatedly if she was okay.
And then the last time I said, "Nan, are you okay?" She said no, and I walked over to her and I said, "What do I do?"
I signaled him to come over to me, and I turned sideways and I took his hands and I put them underneath where the Heimlich is.
I did the Heimlich like the first 6 times, like I pumped it 6 times, and it never came out. So then I slapped her on the back really hard, and then I did it another 6 times, and it finally came loose.
And meanwhile, in my head, I'm thinking, what am I going to do with these 2 little boys? Anyway, all good. And what a hero.
Lucky for Oldford, Simon's mom had shown him how to do the Heimlich maneuver 2 years ago. The family feels a life was saved because of that decision.
It shows that it's important for even young kids to know a little bit of basic first aid, because you never know when you will be in a situation. Like, we always worry about them choking on grapes. And that's always our fear as parents, but in this case, he had to help the caregiver.
Simon stayed calm despite being so young, but he knew what was at risk. One of his favorite people.
How much do you love her?
To the stars and moon and back.
Ryan Cook, CBC News, St. John's.
Lots of folks trying to cool down this weekend. Much of the province has been under a heat warning. We've had events canceled. We have forest fires happening. So what is going on right now? Is this just a weather event, or is this climate change? We'll speak with MUN climatologist Joel Finnis coming up. Time to talk about the weather, something everyone's talking about. Ashley is live out by Harborside Park. Ash, I know that it is sweltering in St. John's, but is it this hot everywhere else in the province?
Yeah, it certainly was sweltering earlier today. Temperatures were the warmest in the east today, but as we head towards central, they were pretty similar. Let's take a look at those numbers this afternoon. 26 degrees in Terra Nova, same thing for Gander, 25 in Badger, which is much different than it was yesterday, and Corner Brook and Stephenville between 26 and 27 degrees. So definitely still lots of heat. 23 degrees in Twillingate today. But if you head towards Labrador, that's where you're going to want to cool off. 13 degrees in Cartwright today, and Lab City was the warmest across the Big Land at 21 degrees. Taking a look at where we're sitting now with that humidex down to 24. It's actually pretty comfortable out in St. John's. Bit of a breeze as well, but it's still sticky. About 30 is what it's feeling like with that humidex. Similar humidex values as you head towards central, even along the northeast coast. And Deer Lake is where it feels the warmest at 33 right now. Now, taking a look at why it's humid, it's because of where the dew points are sitting. So this is a really good indication of what is going on as far as how much humidity is possible in the atmosphere. And when these dew points are higher, that's what happens. So it's 18 right now in St. John's, but 20 in Deer Lake. So there's definitely a correlation between there. And as we head through the next couple of days, there's definitely some relief in the forecast. Now, the dew points are going to stay fairly high for the eastern half of the island, but the temperatures are going to be a bit cooler than what we've been seeing. So it certainly won't feel as bad, but as we head towards Wednesday, Thursday, and even Friday, a very noticeable drop in that humidity pretty much across the board. We're actually going to see some temperatures cool down through the day on Friday. Taking a look at what's going on, area of low pressure just to the west, and a cold front, or rather a warm front. All that warm, humid air to the south of that cold front where those winds are southerly. And you can even see, if you notice, those easterly winds there on the northern peninsula, and that's why your temperatures are significantly cold, and on the other side of that, some of those colder air up across Labrador. So as we head through the night tonight, things are going to stay unsettled across the Big Land for the most part. Fairly quiet across the island. We may see again fog and showers or drizzle develop along the south coast, and then some showers making their way towards the west coast as we head through the overnight and eventually through to the northern peninsula as well. Even the risk of some thunderstorms up across the Big Land, particularly for the west. Temperatures tonight we're not really going to see too much in the way of relief. 18, 19 degrees for a good chunk of the island. Again, northern peninsula a bit cooler, 14 degrees in St. Anthony, and then those temperatures staying in the single digits up across coastal areas of Labrador. As we head through the day tomorrow, those showers and risk of thunderstorms will generally continue. In the morning, it should clear as the afternoon goes, or at least the risk of thunderstorms should end. You're still going to see that chance of showers though. And then as far as the island goes, likely going to see some cloud cover, maybe even a few showers in the mix, but we should see those skies clearing out as the day goes on with increasing cloud again as we head through the evening hours. Taking a look at the forecast, as far as temperatures go, 27 degrees for St. John's, a lot less humid though. Those winds will be brisk as well, 40 to 60 kilometer per hour wind gusts expected, and a few peaks of sun possible, but as you head towards central, better chance of some showers through the day. About 26, 27 degrees, cooler along the south coast, about 18 in Harbour Breton. And the west coast, those temperatures really dipping, 22 degrees for St. John's, much nicer. Corner Brook, southwest winds between 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. Northern portions of the northern peninsula, 22 degrees in St. Anthony tomorrow with that chance of showers, and then staying with those temperatures up across Labrador, around 8 degrees for Makovic, 15 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and Lab City, you'll be hovering around 14 degrees. So the cooler temperatures for Labrador, the heat finally subsiding across the island.
Thanks so much, Ashley. And you know, some people may be wondering if all of this heat, this hot summer that we've been having so far is actually a sign of climate change, or is it just a heat wave like the others that we've seen in the past? I spoke with MUN climatologist Joel Finnis today to get his thoughts on that. So another scorcher of a day here today. Is this just a weather event, or is this climate change?
Okay, so weather, it's all the ups and downs, it's all the noise, it's things changing day to day, right? So weather events come and go. You've got warmer days, you've got colder days. But climate change means that you're steadily shifting the average temperature towards warmer and warmer levels, which then means that a warm day, a 30-degree day, for example, becomes more likely as we move towards a warmer world. And so, yeah, 30-degree days, they show up in St. John's. They're relatively rare. I mean, there's only been one in the last 9 years, aside from yesterday. So, I mean, these things happen, but of course, as things get warmer, you see them more often. Yeah.
How much more often do you think we'll start to see these kinds of temperatures?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard to say exactly how often we'll see these things, but more often is the answer, right? And what I'd stress is that globally we're seeing records being broken over large areas and long-term records being broken more and more often. So we've seen record high temperatures in Canada recorded last summer in BC during their heat wave. We saw record temperatures in Siberia in the last couple of years. We've seen record temperatures in the UK just in the last week. These are indications then that the climate is shifting quickly, and it's not really waiting for us to start reining in our use of fossil fuels, the use of these things, which is producing a lot of the climate change that we're seeing these days. Would I expect to see them more often? Yes. How much more often? I don't know. I'm already seeing changes in climate that we wouldn't have expected, for example, in the UK, for maybe another 15, 20, 30 years. So we're ahead of schedule.
Yeah, what kind of changes are we seeing?
So around here, we are seeing a slow uptick in temperatures. We are seeing particularly an increase in winter temperatures. In this province, the changes are most pronounced in Labrador, where you've seen a loss of sea ice in the winter, where you've seen huge increases in average temperature, particularly in some years where, for example, you have unusable snowmobile trails because they just haven't frozen over, or there's been freeze-thaw events that have left them muddy and a mess, right? So we're seeing critical events in more northern parts of the province, but even around here, we can think about last winter when we started having a lot of rain on snow events, where we had a lot of freeze-thaw, and you can think about the flooding that happened in Rennie's River as a result of one of those heavy rain on heavy snow events. We can expect to see more of that stuff. We can expect to see warmer temperatures in the summer here. We can expect to see more 20-degree days. One thing I'd stress maybe about this July is that our average temperatures are pretty high, pretty well above normal, like a 1.5 degrees above normal compared to the last set of climate normals set in 2010. But also we've had a ridiculous number of days that have been above 20 degrees, right? So we've only had 2 days so far this month that haven't peaked above 20, and we've had a lot that are above 25 as well. That all points to a warmer setup than we typically expect. So how much more often do we expect to see these changes? More often, uncertain how much, but the world is accelerating towards a warmer state than we would have previously expected.
So when we're looking at climate change, it's not so much about hitting the high temperature on a particular day, it's about the length of time in which we stay in those warm temperatures.
Yeah, I mean those one-time records, those single-day records or monthly records, those will get broken and those will continue to get broken, but those are perhaps a little less interesting to me as a climatologist than, say, a stretch of days where things become uncomfortably warm, right? So today we may not break into above the 30-degree mark, but it's still going to be uncomfortably warm for a lot of people who are working in buildings that aren't air-conditioned, who are living in homes that aren't really designed for these kinds of temperatures, and who are frankly suffering because they might not get enough sleep overnight. If they have underlying health issues, those can be exacerbated by the exhaustion caused by heat. So you end up with a situation where stretches of days in the high 20s or low 30s are a problem for us. We don't have to get to the temperatures that are hit in the UK to start seeing some follow-up problems.
And you talk about homes and stuff and infrastructure. We saw in the UK runways that were melting. Airplanes couldn't land, and we saw trains, the rails were melting as well, getting warped because of the high temperatures. And here in this province, we didn't exactly build our cities for hot temperatures. So what kind of challenges could that pose in the future?
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes back to what you can do to help your people, your population, when these high temperatures start being hit, right? So if you don't have cooling stations, if you don't have air-conditioned restaurants people can hide out in, you'll talk to people in Ontario and Quebec who will say, we have these temperatures and higher temperatures all the time and we do fine. But of course, they're more likely to live in an air-conditioned home. They're much more likely to work in an air-conditioned place. They'll go to restaurants that have air conditioning, bars that have air conditioning, things that aren't so common here. I mean, while we might not see higher temperatures, the temperatures we'd see in Toronto or Montreal, we still aren't necessarily ready for those higher temperatures we see here, which is one of the reasons why you have to rethink events like the Tele 10 when you've got temperatures even bumping into the high 20s and low 30s. It takes a long time to flip cities around, right? You can't just take a city that was developed for a cooler climate and rapidly readjust it for warmer temperatures, which is one of the reasons why the UK was in crisis for the last a couple of weeks. It's not just the record-breaking 40-degree temperatures that they were seeing there, it's also the fact that they had high temperatures before that while schools were still in session, in unconditioned environments, working in places that weren't air-conditioned, riding on trains, subways, etc. that aren't air-conditioned as well, and just suffering the entire time.
Happy Valley Goose Bay got just over 38 degrees. Do you think we could start seeing 40-degree days like the UK?
I mean, we haven't ever had temperatures that are close to that, right? We see temperatures in the low 30s as sort of breaking records, right? So I think what is in St. John's in July, it's like 31.5 degrees is our maximum temperature recorded in July here. I think you've got up to like 33 degrees for the maximum temperature overall. So I'd be surprised if we saw 38 degrees here in St. John's anytime soon. But then I'll tell you right now, the UK was surprised to see so many temperatures in the high 30s and breaking 40 degrees last week. So surprises are becoming less and less surprising.
That's a very good point. Thank you so much for this.
No problem. My pleasure.
It was awful.
I did have a son went up to Alberta and that, but he hung it out up there.
I think everybody just went, what do we do now?
Surviving the cod moratorium. We look at how one northern peninsula town dealt with the blow and tried to bounce back. Tonight, we continue our coverage of the 30th anniversary of the cod moratorium. Changes on the Northern Peninsula since the cod moratorium have been immense. Populations have been decimated. Communities have become cabin country, yet most find a way to survive. Troy Turner brings us this story of Conche and its fight over the past 30 years.
A land of plenty, the spoils of a bountiful ocean resource, and ideally located on the eastern side of a sparsely populated peninsula. Conche had it all in the decades of a vibrant cod fishery, a bustling community, a school that saw no fewer than 120 students, a busy fish plant, a strong sense of self, and a pride as palpable as the salt air. But in July 1992, the community changed forever.
We were sitting down at home at night that Mr. Crosby announced it, with no warning, no nothing. We just had all our traps fixed up for that summer. So much more money spent, and everything took it out of the shed. So that's all we had. To a point, I guess, that was the only option. I guess the fishery was pretty well almost to a standstill anyway. You know, we were fishing a lot of traps. That was the only thing used to do for us. We're fishing 6 Japanese cod traps. So we were picking up a little bit of codfish, not all that much, just saying. But we did survive at it, in a sense. But it was to the point that was places there was no cod. When they shut it down, then we had to get into a different fishery, buy bigger boats, more equipment, and with no help from the government. Now, that was the bottom line of that.
The community was devastated, and people began to leave in droves.
With the cod moratorium, when it happened, I don't think at first people really believed that it would last as long as what it did. And the first few years, people were kind of floundering around, wondering what to do. And I really saw a difference in Conche, but it kind of scared you that this beautiful town was going to disappear.
Well, going away back then, with no trade, it was almost impossible for you to get in and make any money worthwhile. I did have a son, went up to Alberta and that, but he hung it out up there. That's all. It was with us fellas. Well, it was the only thing we had going for us, a few capering. We got one check from the moratorium, and when we got a few capering, he wanted that back.
There was fear the community would no longer exist, and with that, the stories of its people vanished.
I get a funny feeling in the pit of my stomach because it was awful. It was the first time I've seen my father cry. And he had retired from the fishery, but I had a brother who was in the fishery. And I think everybody just went, what do we do now? You know, what happens to us? It was a big turning point for this town and for the people in it. We lost a lot of young families that were here with children that left, and like I said, that also led to the demise of our school, and 20 years later. And I think when we formed a historical society, that was there in the back of my mind that we were going to save that history, at least for some time, and be able to tell others about it. You know, it all goes back to the cod moratorium and the people who stayed and were willing to fight for what we have, and hopefully we have succeeded.
With the help of the town, the Historical Society eventually ended up in its own building, the stories preserved in a physical space, and the fishery continued, enough for the fish plant to remain open. These days, the eastern coast of the Northern Peninsula is also starting to see more visitors.
We got a good many tourists coming in since the pavement came through now, the better, right? We had gravel road over the years, so we got our pavement last year, since 1969. Long wait.
The species may have changed, but the fish plant is still busy. And while it's off the beaten path of tourism hotspots such as Grossmore National Park or Lansom Meadows, there's a hint of new life in this old economy.
Well, the same as in most places, I guess. You got icebergs here, you got cod jigging here, you can do whatever. You got hiking here, and it takes people around what Tony doing. So there's lots here to see. The French shores here, that's good. And we got work in the fish plant here, that's good too.
Tony Kearney wasn't born when the cod moratorium was first announced, but she grew up in its wake. In the mid-1990s, she was 2 years old when, like many in the area, her family headed west. Her dad worked in the oil fields while Mom was in university. But summers meant a return to home. Eventually, they moved back.
Just the effect of coming back and forth and always wanting to be home in Conche as a child, just because of the freedom that we had here, the freedom to explore and just the safety net of being in such a small community versus, living in an Alberta suburb and you weren't allowed to go further than the end of the street. So it was always really exciting to come back to Conche.
After university, she wanted to do more than just come home. That's when the social enterprise Moratorium Children was conceived.
Moratorium Children is a private travel experience. Its duration is anywhere between 3 to 5 days or more. So guests come from all over the world, typically coming to look for rejuvenation and to relax and to really get a cultural immersion experience that they wouldn't get anywhere else. So looking around at what we had here, we had beautiful nature, we have a really rich history. And then just personally growing up in the period after the moratorium and learning as I got a bit older and did my own research and was very interested in the history of the moratorium and how it really shaped Outport, Newfoundland. So I wanted to tie that all together in an experience that people from all over the world could appreciate and enjoy and really feel like they're a part of the place here. I would take guests around telling kind of the story of what Moratorium Children are and what my experience was growing up here in a time that was so depressing and so isolating, and where nobody really understood what was happening to the communities. We didn't really understand as children until we got older what the effects of the moratorium were on our small community. So I really tried to take guests through my own childhood experiences here, highlighting things we used to do as children, places we used to visit, and what life was like to get them a feel for what it really was like here in that era.
Inspired by the work of Shorefast on Fogo Island, the business opened amid the pandemic.
The word moratorium itself around here definitely carries a lot of weight. It definitely carries a bit of darkness to it. What we really try to do at Moratorium Children is use the word in a bit more of a positive way, because every ending is a new beginning. So while that might have been the end of the cod fishery, we really try to highlight the narrative that even though the moratorium has happened and it has affected rural communities like Conche, there is a resilience that's found in that, and it's found in all of Newfoundland's history that we managed to push through, and we're not ones to accept our fate. So it's really a fight for survival at the end of the day.
I hope that the fish plant stays viable. I really hope that. Because that employs people. I hope that the interpretation centre and the contents of the interpretation centre attracts more visitors to the area, and maybe small businesses can come from that, from the tourism industry. One person who came in through our door down here, and the first thing she says was, "I have driven all up the eastern seaboard." She was from Florida. And she comes in here and she looks at me and she says, "When I popped that hill up there," she said, I said, "Sailor Jack's Hill?" She said, "Yes. When I popped that hill," she said, "I knew." She said, "This place has got spirit." So I think that's my favorite thing that anybody has said about it, right? And hopefully that spirit will do as well, and keep us growing.
Call it spirit, call it pride, call it dogged determination. The people of this area plan to find their way and chart their course into the future. Troy Turner, CBC News, Conche.
With the Pope delivering his long-awaited apology for the forced assimilation of Indigenous children at residential schools, we decided to dip into the archives to learn more about this complicated history of the Roman Catholic Church in Labrador Innu communities. In 2019, Akat Piwash of Natwashish traveled to the CBC studio in St. John's to record hymns in the Innu language. She was accompanied by her daughter, Manishan, who explained how she balances Catholic faith with Innu spirituality. Here's Bailey White with more.
The Innu have been in Labrador for thousands of years, and they've always had religion. Before there were priests, there were shamans. Manishan Edmonds says it was a shaman on a long hunting trip in neighboring territory who was first introduced to Catholicism. When the shaman returned home, he told his people what he learned. The faith was passed down from generation to generation, alongside the traditional Innu faith, which tells of animal spirits who must be respected. Occasionally, a priest would visit the Innu, but the church didn't become a fixture until the 1960s, when the Innu moved off the land and into houses in Davis Inlet.
My mom, she dragged us to church. We got dragged to church. If we had a choice, we wouldn't go to church. And we sat down and we listened. We listened to the singing and the service. And it's always in Innu. My mom didn't go to school. She taught herself to read and write in Innu by going to church, by reading the Innu hymns and the Innu service books. So, and today she still reads the gospel in church. Yeah, she still goes to church every Sunday.
In those early Davis Inlet days, the priest was a powerful man. He brought food and supplies and was often in charge of social assistance programs. But priests typically discouraged the old way of life, traditional medicine, drumming ceremonies, even speaking the language. What's worse, some priests were violent, some sexually abused children. So while Akat found strength in her faith, for others, the church brought nothing but pain.
Mom is very influenced by the church because that's what she learned. Our generation started fighting back. No more abuse, no more of this, this negativity that's on our culture, on our parents. So, but they didn't have a choice because they were just coming off the land.
Priests no longer hold the power they once did, and Manishan says now she has a healthy relationship with the church. Even though some clergy members did harm her community, she still finds comfort in her faith because it's what her mother taught her. She balances Catholicism with Innu spirituality.
There's two worlds, there's our Innu world where our spirituality, thrives. Because that's who we are, that's who we are, and we can't forget that. We never forget that. And then there's the other spiritual part of the Catholic Church, that she grew up, and her dad and her grandparents, passed that on to her along with being the Innuness. So there's a combination of that you can't separate now because they're together, forever.
Akat was among the first Mushwa Innu to learn these hymns in church, but she will not be the last. These recordings will be shared in Natwashish so that people can listen for years to come. Manishan says women her age do sing in church, but somehow it's not the same.
We still go to church, we're still singing, but she's always got the lead. Someone got the lead, those songs. And it's usually my mom that leads those songs. There's no one like her.
And that was a story from our archives in 2019. And sadly, Akat Piwash passed away last year at the age of 80.
Well, heat has certainly been the story over the last couple of days, but the number one question past heat is actually, when is it going to rain? So it does look like we'll see some rain on Wednesday for parts of the province. Let's take a look at that forecast. 24 degrees in St. John, so we're seeing those cooler temperatures, but again, that chance of showers. Same thing through central as well as the west coast. Pretty much across the board really is where we'll see that chance of showers. It likely won't amount to too much, but we could see some periods of rain at times. Temperatures through central will sit around 26, 27 degrees. Along the south coast a bit cooler, again 18 to 20 degrees. And then across Labrador, unfortunately not getting out of those single-digit temperatures for coastal areas. Cartwright only hovering around 9 degrees. That is well below where you should be sitting this time of year. Taking a look at Wednesday evening, into Thursday, we'll likely see things clear out. We may see a few lingering showers into the afternoon on Thursday, but likely some peaks of sun in the mix as well. Temperatures will be pretty comfortable. 20, 21 degrees, a little warmer on the west coast, northern peninsula cooler though, about 12 degrees, and then back into the double digits for you in Cartwright. 20 degrees, the story for Lab City. So taking a look at the long range forecast, as you head towards the weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, into the 20s. Looks like some rain will move in again on Saturday for St. John's and eastern Newfoundland. As far as central Newfoundland goes, you're looking at temperatures in the 20s through Thursday, and then by Friday bumping back up again into the mid 20s through the day, 26 degrees on Saturday, and then for western Newfoundland, looking pretty nice, mix of sun and cloud both Thursday and Friday, and then showers will return on Saturday with a temperature near 23 degrees. Now, as far as eastern Labrador goes, unfortunately, it's going to stay unsettled as it has been for the last month or so. Some clearing skies though for Thursday, and temperatures will get back into the 20s as we head towards the weekend. Western Labrador, a few showers lingering both Wednesday and Thursday, and then a lot more cloud cover expected both Friday and Saturday, temperatures between 18 and 20 degrees. So taking a look at the weather photo of the day today, warm evening at Flat Bay Brook. Thank you to Brian for that shot. And if you have any weather photos you'd like to share with us, send them to my Facebook page, Twitter, or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Another beautiful photo, and it's also picture perfect down there at St. John's Harbor tonight. Thank you so much, Ashley. Looking forward to another beautiful day tomorrow and to that rain that's coming. It'll be great for all the plants for sure.
We definitely all need it.
Yep. Well, that's it for us tonight. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us.
Good night.